Okay, we will begin. Welcome, and this session is called Space Tourism and Sustainability Challenge. We have two speakers today, Steph Palladini, professor from Queen Margaret University in Edinburgh, and Krish Saha, an associate professor at Birmingham City University. And I'm giving the floor to Steph.
Thank you, Oksana. Thank you for having us to this amazing conference. Today we are going to present about space sustainability, in specific space tourism, although we will also talk a little bit in general about all the challenge to make the space sector sustainable. So let me share my screen. Okay, I hope you can see well my screen. So this is just to give you some background. It's a work that we, Krish, have been doing for a few years now, and in general about sustainability of the space sector. On space tourism, more specifically, it's about the last 3 years, and we will start from what were the findings of our latest article that we published around 1 year ago, and what is the progress done from that moment on. Also because, as you all know, this is a sector that is the specific area of the space industry that is changing very, very quickly, and what is necessarily true or accepted in 1 year is not necessarily valid the year after, for many reasons, although there are some really fundamental issues that are present, and they are not going away anytime soon. So the dream of going to space has been present forever, and from the moment Dennis Tito managed to become the first citizen to travel to space, private citizen, of course, is become a sort of a tourism, of a sort of reality, the space tourism, and not just a dream. Now, there are a lot of discussion about if space tourism should exist in the first place, for many reasons, or if and it's not just about technical feasibility or cost, but also about sustainability and ethics beyond that, including other aspects that can be safety concern or regulatory issues. So the topic is, of course, very, very complex, and it would be impossible to really cover this in the short remit of a presentation. So we will just give some quick covers of what has been done so far in terms of research. Also because, again, there is a lot of literature on the space sector. On space tourism is relatively more recent, and not just because space tourism is necessarily recent, but also because the attention to that has been a reality of the last 20 years and not before. There are a lot of barriers or concern or issues that surround space tourism, and this is something even the enthusiasts of space tourism are aware of, from the environmental costs, the ethical questions about should be existing or not, or to the challenge, the regulatory challenge it poses, both legal and in terms of commercial terms. Just thinking about insurance, or who should even certify the flight. Now it's not the area here to discuss the legal part, also because it has been done in previous session today, so I won't go there again, but of course there are absolutely a lot of things that needs to be considered. There is also the cost involved, because although reusable rockets have lowered the budget requirements for all space mission, in terms of tourism, things are a little bit different. And again, I make reference to what I said today about the lowering cost of sending kilos to space, but this does not necessarily apply to space tourism. And also there are a lot of things that need to change in terms of building an infrastructure for that, setting a new standards. So it's really, there are a lot of barriers. And for our perspective as a researcher of the space sector with a sustainability focus, because this is what we come from, define what sustainability means for the space tourism is also regarding define from in one way what is sustainability as a whole in the space sector, because again, there are a lot of discussion ongoing, and there are some space agency, for example, in the UK, especially in Scotland, that there are a lot of call for making the sector more sustainable, but also what sustainability means for tourism in space tourism and tourism in general, because again, this is something that needs to be defined if we want to make the sector sustainable. Now, we have published this article in December 2022. Of course, the data are from the last 20 years of the literature review, and we didn't cover all the debate on tourism, sustainability tourism in general, but what we try to do is to apply the framework of sustainable tourism as a whole to the space sector. Now, the main challenge we have found here that to apply sustainability indicators for tourism as a whole to the sector, you need first to define what space tourism is, which is still unclear for many reasons. And this has been for us the first challenge we met when we try to define what a sustainable space tourism could be. In which way we can make it sustainable if we are still not accepted, there is no accepted definition of space tourism or even space tourist in general. So if you look at the European Space Agency definition of space tourism, you will see, for example, this was a definition from 2008, was an activity that encompassed the execution of suborbital flight by privately funded or privately operated vehicles and the associated technology development driven by the space tourism market. This was the accepted definition at the time. Now, still, if you look at the academic literature on the space tourism, you will see that it's the definition itself is wider than that. First of all, because now there is not just the discussion on suborbital tourism, there is also orbital and beyond orbital, although this is maybe only in many years' time. Then there is also the virtual tourism, with enhanced virtual reality. There are some companies that are also in the UK producing environments, virtual environments that can experience and let you experience space as an astronaut or as a visitor. Some of them are quite interesting. And for example, I tried with my Oculus the application of the ISS to do an extra vehicular activity in virtual reality, and I was quite impressed of the rendition. So it's not something I would discard as a space tourism. And also the spacecraft launching observation. This is another things that have expanded over time. And there are now, if you look in practice, there are a lot of tour operators that organize trip just to watching spacecraft launch. So the definition has evolved as the sector has evolved, and this is why I said at the beginning we deal with something that is changing, constantly changing, and becoming, I would say, even more complex. Now, again, for another problem that you will see, if we keep at the spacecraft launching observation or virtual reality, you are probably less problems regarding the legal framework that surround space tourism. If you go to suborbital or orbital tourism, it's becoming more complex, because Again, there is not a legal counterpart to the ESA definition of for the industry as a space tourism. The requirements vary depending if there is a visit to ISS or a Virgin Galactic experience, or what is the visiting crew member requirements. So the problem is also, as said in one of the previous session by Professor Pagallo, the regulatory existing framework is no longer suitable for today space sector and space industry. In the space tourism industry particularly, it's more complicated given all the regulatory issues and the insurance issue that needs to be applicable. If we have time, we might also cover the specific issue Virgin Galactic had with their flight, their famous first flight, because there are things that not necessarily came out in the press for the regulatory challenge they had, because they deviated from the accepted trajectory, from the agreed trajectory for security reason. But this is an example of the issue we get when we start going deeper in this sense. And then there is, of course, the ethics behind the space tourism, because it's environmental sustainability is a massive issue, and we will talk about that later on when covering the other literature. We should even have that, because if we do that for space exploration, there are some good reasons, but doing that just for the pleasure of traveling, or for does it really, it's something that we should do. And also there is an issue of equality of access. Of course, it's a mind-blowing experience, but it's not an experience for everybody, for a good or bad of it. So there are a lot of issues behind that, the possibility of actually do this travel, particular extreme travel, as some literature consider the space tourism. And of course, the environmental sustainability, which we will discuss. Now, in our article, we tried to apply to look at the accepted sustainable tourism diagram. Is the one that you will find in pretty much every academic article that discuss sustainable tourism as a whole, dividing the sustainability component in three main categories: the socio-economic, socio-cultural sustainability, the environmental sustainability, and the economic sustainability. And there are a lot of indicators that are some of them present in pretty much all framework, others just in a few of them, but there are a lot that are being identified, and in this diagram there are some of them. Now, what Krish and I tried to do in this last years that we have worked on this specific sustainable component of the space tourism is to try to see in which way applying this framework to the space tourism industry can still be valid, because of course is such a specific kind of tourism that is you cannot just replicate the framework and expect to be valid. And we came out with a conceptual model that still consider the three main components, like environmental, economic, and social, although a little bit different from what they apply to the general tourism. But we found that the only possibility to really have a sustainable space tourism is to have a more sustainable and less carbon heavy model of tourism, which can only come from technological aspect. So less carbon, addressing the overcrowding of Earth orbits, apply circular economy concept, which are the things that with some enough technological progress, we can try to apply to space tourism to make it sustainable. And this is what our research stood 1 year ago. Now, in the meantime, the things have been evolving, and so we have tried to see in which way this is working, if it's working, and if we can make it better to make it work. So, Krish, now I will leave it to you to discuss the state of debate today.
Thank you, Steph. Thanks, Oksana, for arranging this, for us. I'm very glad to be here. Unfortunately, I missed the sessions earlier, and it's evening in the UK. So good evening, everyone, whoever is joining us in this webinar today. Now, as Steph outlined, what we have done in our previous paper. So we took a step further from there, and recently we have engaged in another work on space tourism and where the industry is heading and how academics are considering the growth of the industry, what they see as the future and what they see as the main challenges. Now, we work in business schools. We see space from the social scientist point of view. Now, if we have, rocket scientists in this panel, our view to space is fundamentally different. We see it from the social aspect, and tourism per se is a domain of a study that captures the social orientation of tourism, social orientation of attraction, and associated elements of it. Now, in the process of understanding the academic growth of space tourism in academic literature, we have undertaken a PRISMA model, a very popular systematic literature review approach adopted in the social science discipline and in the business school. We have used the Scopus database and to identify what literatures are being published since our paper's publication, and we used space tourism as the Boolean operator, as the keyword to find articles. Now, I'm quite interested to show you this. I don't know if I can. Anyway, if there is an interest later on, we could I can show you the raw output of that finding. Now, there were 12 articles that have been published in this area since our publication has gone through. And I have sort of coded them and categorized them. And according to our coding process, we see there are 4 big areas where social scientists are arguing about space tourism. The first one is augmentation, the virtual reality one that Steph has already outlined. There is a plethora of work that has been done in the academia, in the industry, to augment the experience of space on Earth. Now, as we understand, it's a very expensive business to embark on this kind of touristic activities, where we see ultra super rich people going to space, experiencing the what's called an exceptional view of the Earth and others in the space that is beyond the reach of ordinary people like ourselves maybe. Now, for us to experience the awe of space, I think augmentation and virtual reality would do a great benefit to humanity. Now, as you can see from the table, Bonavina, Gorbani, and Sang have published on this area, arguing different kind of technological advancement and different kind of adaptation challenges and consumer perception and things like that. Now, as we mentioned, consumer perception, the next big category of literature that is coming in light is the consumer insight, how the perception of users of space tourism, the tourists, how the personalization of the experience can be done, how a greater access to this experience can be achieved, which we believe that it is right for humanity to experience the awe of space. So those are the things that has been highlighted here. And also fundamental thing was there is how the entire experience can be more personalized. And in this field of study, we see quite a lot of interest from the academic colleagues who mainly operate in marketing and what's called advertisement discipline of social science. Now, a growing area where there is a lot of intellectual and theoretical debate is going on is the ethics governance. And D. Arazuo and his colleagues, operated in this field. We can see there's quite a lot of questions popping up. We'll hold the questions for now. Thanks for asking this question. We will address those. Now, ethics governance is mainly focusing on, it's a sort of an offshoot research of consumer insight type of research that we are assessing how human health is coping in space tourism experience. We are gathering a lot of data in simulation exercises and things like that for science, for the greater good. But now, when this data is used for commercial purposes to gather intelligence of consumers' insight, to gather intelligence to promote a commercial benefit, how ethical is that? We see quite a lot of theoretical debate emerging in this area. And I and Steph, we both believe that there will be a further growth of this domain of research going forward. And the final category that we see is research on health, where colleagues primarily from the psychology and other non-medicinal health areas that mainly operate within the social science domain, they have argued with a lot of interest that how human health is coping or is going to cope in space experience. What can be done to make it more accessible? For example, is it possible for someone who has some form of disability to experience this, and how that can be achieved, and those areas. So we think these are the 4 core areas that is leading the sustainability discourse of space tourism currently, and of course this will shape the future research agenda. Now, if you could go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so we embarked on a analytical framework development here, and we believe we keep the ethical governance at the center of our analytical framework, and we see how eco-friendly technology that Steph has already discussed from our previous paper. We see technology as the 4th dimension of sustainability for space tourism, and then we also include the sustainability initiatives that previous authors have outlined. There were 18 different areas of it. And we believe that the augmentation and consumer insights and personalization of space tourism experience will be shaped quite a lot by the ethical governance and the regulatory aspects that will be coming in future. In return, those 3 areas will initiate quite a lot of sustainability activities, and will make probably this will help hopefully bring a lot of social sustainability, at least, if not environmental, to the space tourism discourse. The health, well-being, and medical advancement as well. That is, again, as we suggested, ethical governance is the centerpiece of our analytical framework, will be shaped by this quite significantly. And also the eco-friendly technology, again, that we have highlighted in our previous paper. We will see here how the technological advancement can make the launch of rockets and satellites more eco-friendly. And as I suggested, now that if not environmentally, but the whole thing will have a lot of contribution to social sustainability dimension by promoting better access, more openness, and a massification of the experience to a certain extent using virtual reality and augmentation of the experience. Now, considering the whole thing, I believe, and we are striving towards a responsible and sustainable space tourism. Now, this analytical framework is at a very nascent stage. It is still developing. We have embarked on a quite a vast literature review work recently. We are very close to the end of that, and hopefully when we finish that, the analytical framework will be ready to be tested, in the next work. I think we will expect everyone, whoever is attending this panel today will be interested to read our next work. Now, here I'm going to stop and I'm going to pass it over to Steph. Steph, over to you.
Yes, thanks, Krish, for presenting this. This looks like an optimistic framework, and hopefully we will be able to refine and test that in practice. Now, of course, Krish is among us is the optimistic person. I'm more the pessimistic one, because I see a lot of potential, but I also see a lot of challenges to make this work. And it's not just because I'm in Scotland, and in Scotland sustainability is really a huge concern for many reasons, and is one the Scottish Space Agency has recently published guidelines on the sustainability on the space sector as a whole. Now, I see a concern about how to make this space tourism and space sector in general sustainable. Now, again, it's impossible to cover all the area where there are concerns. I'm just going to focus to 3 of them in this final part of the presentation. 2 are specifically on environment, and again, one is typically the environmental area in terms of carbon footprint, but in general, the damage we do in our environment with space tourism as a typical launch activity. Now, there are studies and models that have been developed. I am showing here one model that, because it's publicly available, it's open source, so you can play with that and play with the data. Now, the point is that the damage to the environment, both in terms of damage to the ozone or in terms of soot particles from rockets, are a great concern. Now, it is true, and that this is something that is known, because in the press has been said that the 1 hour and a half of the Virgin Galactic is equivalent of 10 hours flight of transatlantic flight. This is true. The problem is that if you look at that, Virgin Galactic was only taken 6 people. Imagine if you check the emission towards just the person. I think the NOAA has done the maths. It's about the double of what is annually suggested from the Paris Agreement for the single person, the annual carbon footprint. And this is an example. The real problem is that the emission, the damage to the ozone done by this kind of flight, it's not just the emission themselves, is the fact that they are occurring on a much higher altitude. So far, the impact of rockets is quite low compared to just the aviation. But what if is going to go up? This paper that I published on Earth Future last year just give a very conservative, I would say, estimate, but the results are scary just with the very conservative estimates. Also, again, I am not an engineer myself, and at the basics I'm a statistician and a data scientist, but the numbers for me are scary, because even the hybrid engine that Virgin Galactic are portraying as very environmental friendly, the problem with the soot they release are more difficult to measure and track according to the environmental agencies. So we don't even know what is going to happen. So I think we are reason to be concerned. And again, we don't know enough to say, okay, space tourism is going to be not as damaging as we believe, or we don't even understand in which way is going to be damaging, simply because we don't have enough data. If the projections are correct, however, I think this is something really that is more, even more, it's something needed even more than just eco-friendly technology. We will need to have far more than that. The second point of concern, I would say, is the clogging of the Earth's orbit. Now, space tourism is probably not going to be one of the causes of debris, because historically there are other causes of debris from ASAT-2 incident between satellites, but certainly are going to be affected by the debris. If we look at the avoidance maneuver from the ISS, the moment we are going to have orbital station, commercial station, they are going to have the same issues, and this get back to the needs of a framework that need to be in place. And in any case, the more the launch, the more this problem will become serious. Now with CRISIO, we are working also on models to estimate the financial impact of debris proliferation, and this is another area of work we are doing, assessing the sustainability of space. Now, space tourism for the moment is not necessarily be concerned in terms of suborbital flight, but I see definitely this as one area of serious concern that can affect the industry, and therefore also space tourism are part of the space industry. And the final point of concern is about the vision we want to have to space. And I think about what Zubrin was saying this morning about we need to have good ideas, because bad ideas create bad consequences. And this is so, and this is where the discussion of space tourism, but also in general the space sector, stop being just technical and it becomes both social and political. And this is something we need to consider. The first things in terms of political, we need to have a sustainable vision of space at a political level. So we know we have a different idea of space depending on the country. So we come from. In Europe, we see certain things when in the way the space should be used. In other countries, the approach is different. And when I say that, I not just think about just the civilian versus military. It's just that what we want the space to be for. And this is also, it's not just a problem for decision makers or policy makers, it's also a problem for people, because if there is not a strong support for space on Earth by normal people, the whole sector is going to suffer. So I would close here just to mention the Inmarsat report just recently published, was in 2022. And if you have not look at that, I really recommend you to do, because this is the largest report of its kind ever produced. There have been around 20,000 people interviewed across 11 countries, and they asked also from different sector and different demographic, so from very young people, the Gen Z, until the old that can remember still the start, the Sputnik. So it's a very comprehensive study. And the interesting things for me was a part of what people associate the space with is as going to be satellite, as going to be is to be the alien, the space exploration, tourism. And it's also very interesting the fact that depending of the country, you are citizen of you will associate space with something different. Now Chinese, it's 60% of Chinese associate space with space tourism compared to global average of 20%. Now for me this is very, very important, because what happened in China is going to affect dramatically what is going to be the future of the space sector in general and specific on tourism. Now, here is not the venue to discuss Chinese space tourism because it's just starting, but also is progressing quite quickly because there is a very dynamic private sector, space sector in China at the moment. So but it's important that what is going to be the different orientation of people. And also interesting in the report, what people are worried about. And among the main concern is about the space junks, but also polluting space and the impact of the flights on the Earth atmosphere. And interesting is actually the impact of the Earth atmosphere is one of the main concern in China. Now, how much people then know about this and what is coming from the movies or like Gravity or other things, this is again another story, but I think it is very important if you want to foster and having a space sector, a space development that is sustainable. We need also to keep in mind what people think and in which way we can make sure we can come out with something that is really sustainable and feasible for our planet. I think I've said everything. Christian, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
No, I think you know, you covered everything that we wanted to discuss today. I think we might want to go for the QA. There are two very good questions there.
Yeah.
Oksana, if you know.
Yes. So we have two questions. Should I read the question or you will read the question? And
I think we have the questions here. Can you see the screen? I don't know. Can I? Yeah, I can.
Yes.
Of course.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, okay. So the first question is there financial feasibility in emerging space commercialization sectors like asteroid mining, lunar tourism, and the space for space economy sector?
Okay. Do you want to answer, Krish, or I want to answer what you?
I can give it a try.
Yeah. Okay. I will chip in. Yes.
Yeah. Thanks, Robin. It's a very good question. Actually, we have been thinking about this, and I'm glad that you asked this question. Financial feasibility. I think when we talk about space, is more political than is financial, as you know, as we try to outline in our presentation here. I think there is a massive pride involved in the ability of space exploration, not only for nation state, but also for organization, companies, commercial ventures who are involved in this. You may have followed the recent success of Indian lunar exploration and how India suddenly become quite famous worldwide for the success it has demonstrated, and the narrative of national pride that was going through in social media is exceptional. So I think when nation states are engaged in these activities, the financial feasibility from a pure commercial sense may not be a very viable question there. They will rather focus on the gains they get from this kind of explorative activities in terms of their soft power, often as well the hard power that can be translated into defense and other areas as well. However, when we talk about the commercial ventures who are engaged in space tourism businesses, it will probably be more of a long-term investment, long-term financial feasibility rather than a short-term profit or loss. And I'm sure there is quite a lot of investment opportunities here that ultra rich, super rich people and probably venture capitalists will be looking into. I cannot remember exactly the name, but quite a while ago there was a documentary on this, and there was this guy who is a billionaire businessman from the US who actually introduced himself as a person who mined the moon. So there is a significant financial feasibility there, probably not for the time being at present, but the strategic gain from it and the financial advantages those strategic gain can bring will definitely provide a lot of feasibility towards this kind of business. Steph, if you want to,
yes, actually, thanks,
yeah.
Krisha. Actually, you have also covered the second question about what the factor that can be taken into account when investing on that. For me, it's really about, first of all, it's impossible. We shouldn't, how can I say, put together things like asteroid mining, lunar tourism. It's true they are all unconventional, but there are very different factors to consider in one or another, and also the possibilities, because it's this morning there was a lot of discussion about the reusability of space rocket, and now I can see that actually were groundbreaking, because the lower the cost for kilo sent into orbit. Now I see, and this is, for example, what is happening in China with a lot of private investment on the private company in the private space sector. Certainly there are some part of this unconventional space venture that are going to be profitable in the medium term instead of the long term, because this is, of course, it's something that is going to be taking time. And also there is not a straight path like the many failures in the last 20 years of the private investment. The latest was Virgin Orbit, but there are many that are gone bust in a very little time. So it's really complex to say it's worth what are the feasibility as a whole. Each one has specific challenges. Of course, also each one has specific appeal, because there is this. If you look, for example, at the new space hotel, the space station that is going to become an hotel if everything goes according to plan. That is the Voyager. It's supposed to be start in 2026. There is also public funding. It's open funding that you go there and commit money for the sort of GoFundMe station that is open, and they also raised a lot of money already. So when we think about the factors, actually we might see that the motivation for investing can be very different depending of the enterprise and depending of the single venture itself. However, a factor that I would say is going to be fundamental, and no matter which kind of investment, is the legal framework. We said that at the beginning, has been repeated many times today in the conference by various speakers. Unless we put end to the regulatory framework still existing, we are not going to make this unconventional venture a reality, and it's going to be increasingly difficult even to keep things as they are now, because the framework is directed to states and not to private company, just as simple as that. So it's very difficult to address this point if we don't address the regulatory framework first. So I guess these are the factors that needs to be considered in any case. And I would say, as a prospective space tourists, they should look what kind of insurance they have, if they have it, who is going to certify their flight. There is an evolving literature here about the risks, even for the single traveler, about actually doing this flight. So it's a very complex discussion here in terms of factor, and the financial feasibility is just one of the points.
Thank you, Steph.
Thank you, Oksana.
If anybody has any more questions, please go ahead and type them. Oh, we have one in Q&A. Okay, let's see. Oh no, it's just thank you, Mr. Saka and Ms. Palladini, for your inputs.
So thank you very much for having us here. and it was
Yes,
very,
thank you
very
for a wonderful
enjoyable.
presentation. If anybody has more questions, please go ahead and type them. Well, if nobody has any more questions, this is the end of this session. Thank you very much, Steph and Krish. And we have more sessions going on until the end of the day, so we invite you to attend all of them if you wish. And thank you everyone for joining. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.